I said I was going to do something different. And this is what I meant. My second favorite Dragon Ball Z movie. Hello everybody, Tyron the Guy 3 here, and welcome to part 8.5 of the Dragon Ball Z movie reviews. And the reason I say 8.5 is because a lot of people don't really view this as a movie, and it's a really hidden gem that I'm glad that they decided to sort of kind of break out in 2010. But this has been going on for a while now, and I just wish that it was given the pure movie-like justice that it deserved, and it didn't, but I'm gonna let that pass. Anyway, time to do our review of Dragon Ball Z Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans 1993's version. So, and besides I'm going to do the same thing I always do, time placement, movie summary, and then review of how I feel about the movie and what I recommend it, but I'm also going to do something a little different as well. I'm also going to do a bit of a history lesson to start this all off. So, basically, long story short, this was not really a movie per se, but the way it's formatted, it might as well be a movie. Dragon Ball Z Plan to Eradicate the Super Saiyans, or Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans, was actually a side story or a mini-series of the Dragon Ball Z franchise that debuted in Japan in 1993. Now, this was actually a video game, to be more or less, to give it a more proper name. It was actually a video game in Japan. However, it was on a system called the Play Media. Now, the Play Media was or Playdia as it was called. The Playdia wasn't a thing that was used really in America. In fact, there were really no imports of it in America at all. That's why its Japanese term is Dragon Boro Zeto Gaiden Saiyajin Zetsumetsu Kayaku. Sorry if I botched up the Japanese language there, but that was its official name given when it was shown in Japanese. And we wouldn't get an English release all the way up until 2010. And even still, that was the re-released version with most of the plot cut out and pretty much most of the fighting just put in. And even in that version, we don't get a real fathom of it because it's only about 30 minutes long rather than the hour and a half that it actually was. Putting all of the side stories together into one full franchise, this did actually last 1 hour and 30 minutes. And on YouTube, you can actually see clips of each part, ranging from parts 1 to 5 to finish off the entire series. But in all due respect, I like to count this as a movie. If you put all of the elements together, it counts as one big giant movie. Now for the time placement. This takes place in the main timeline. If anything, this takes place in the main timeline probably 2 days after the legendary Super Saiyan Broly movie. So this is probably the shortest range in which one movie switches over to another. Because Broly's even referenced in this movie. So it's good to say that this happened shortly after the Broly movie, and the warriors that are used include Super Saiyan Goku, Super Saiyan Gohan, Super Saiyan Trunks, Super Saiyan Vegeta, and Super Namekian Piccolo, which means that, yeah, same era, the 10-day white period that Cell gave before the Cell games. So, with that said, let us begin. I love this movie, first of all. I just want to let that be totally clear. But the movie basically begins by showing a flashback of all of the Saiyans destroying Planet Plant after their disagreement at the treaty that they had with the Tuffles. Because at first the Tuffles and the Saiyans lived together, but now the Saiyans have rebelled and decided to take over the entire planet, thus destroying most of the Tuffles. The last of the Tuffles to be destroyed was the physical embodiment of Dr. Raichi, a Tuffle that was a major scientist. And when he died, he basically activated a machine that would steal all of the hatred from the Tuffles that was still inside of their dead bodies and fathom it and materialize it into several different ghost warriors. After that flashback is done, things cut to Goku's side while he's chopping up firewood. When he's chopping up the firewood, Goku brings it back to his house with Gohan and Chi-Chi. And then they notice that King Kai basically calls him in and tells him, oh no, Dende ends up calling him in, because Dende's the guardian of the Earth at this point, and notices that something very wrong is happening on Earth, and a lot of the animals and plant life are losing energy. Then King Kai informs him that this is happening as well, and that if he doesn't hurry, everything's going to die. Mr. Popo also informs them of what's going on as well, and Goku decides to go see exactly what the source is. When they do this, they head off to Capsule Corp in order to see if Bulma can find out exactly what the source is, and Bulma confirms that it is a outside source from a different planet that have begun to make generators to spread through the entire different parts of the Earth. And Mr. Popo states that they're probably located in several areas of the Earth, including the desert, the Arctic, the mountains, and like I think this volcanic-like region. So, Goku and the others make a plan to go out and find them. But before they do that, a bunch of these Ghost Warriors come in and start fighting against Goku and Gohan. Now, I think that this is called the Destron gas, by the way, just letting you all know this. This is the gas that's being released all around the world that's slowly killing life. The Destron gas is releasing itself all around the planet, and while Goku's fighting off against these Ghost Warriors, he tries to use the Kamehameha in order to fight them. Unfortunately, the Destron gas is so strong, it's sucking the energy even out of Gohan and Goku, so they're unable to use Energy Blast for the time being. Meanwhile, Piccolo comes in and helps in the fray and tries to fight them off. But once they finally end up destroying them using physical power, they decide to split up so that they can destroy each of the Destron gas monitors much quicker. Piccolo heading towards the volcanic area, while Gohan heads towards the Arctic area, and Goku heads towards the wasteland area. When they all spread out and try to destroy their own generators, it's kind of comical. Piccolo meets one of the Ghost Warriors that's defending the generator, and he's very clumsy and plants these like bombs all around the area. But the funny thing is, the Ghost Warrior ends up landing into one of the bombs himself and blowing himself up. Goku actually goes in and destroys his the one that's guarding the generator. He destroys his enemy relatively easy with physical prowess alone. And while 2 generators have been destroyed so far, the energy that a lot of the warriors have lost is starting to come back. So Gohan ends up getting a lot of his energy back. Meanwhile, Trunks goes off in order to destroy one of the generators himself. While that's happening, Gohan tries to go and destroy the last one. And while he's trying to destroy the last one, there's too many Ghost Warriors for him to fight. Goku and Piccolo end up joining him in that fight, and then Trunks comes in as well. And they end up fighting off against the Ghost Warriors in all-out battle. But there's still so many of them. Then Vegeta ends up joining the fray and helping destroy the last remaining. And they end up destroying the last generator and try to meet up back into Capsule Corp. However, they've been informed that the Destron gas is still out on the Earth and is still sucking the life out of all of the beings. They're trying to figure out what exactly is going on and why this is happening. Turns out that there is a Destron gas generator somewhere in West City, and they learn that this technology was made by the Tuffles. Vegeta basically goes into the origin story of who the Tuffles are and how they used their technology in order to fight off the Saiyans in the war so many years ago. With the knowledge of who exactly their enemy is now, Goku, Trunks, Piccolo, Vegeta, and Gohan try to destroy the last generator, only this time things are a bit different. They're a bit different in the sense that the Destron gas has materialized itself into 4 different villains. Villains that the Z Warriors have already defeated once before. Cooler, Turles, Lord Slug, and Frieza. Now, a lot of y'all are probably saying, Tyrone, if this happens in the main storyline, in the main DBZ timeline, then why the hell are Cooler, Lord Slug, and Turles in this movie? I can't explain that, actually. That's the one thing I probably can't explain. But I can rest assured that this happens in the main timeline because of where the character placement is. There's no real contradictions basically going on. We can just assume that Goku destroyed those villains at his other time. But they do explain that these villains have been destroyed once before. So Goku, it's an all-out brawl between the Z Warriors versus some returning villains. And for the most part, the Z Warriors beat them with relative ease since, it's been a while since they fought them and they're much stronger now. However, the difference is these villains can keep coming back to life. Every time they get killed or blasted or knocked around, they can materialize back because the Destron gas basically brings them right back. And this basically means that while Goku and the others have the upper hand, they're still at a disadvantage because, one, the Destron gas makes their energy go down, and two, the villains that keep reappearing keep reappearing, so Goku and the others are getting more fatigue as the fight goes around. And you also notice that they have a really extreme hatred for the Saiyans. It's basically because the Tuffles have the hatred for the Saiyans, and the villains that are materialized are nothing more than just ghosts. They're not the real, actual villains. So it's kind of weird to see Turles say he hates Saiyan so much when he himself is a Saiyan. Well, anyway, long story short, they decide to go ahead and destroy the generator itself. And when they destroy the generator, that ends up ultimately giving them the ability to destroy the villains without the villains coming back to life. And, well, while they're trying to fight the villains, they end up destroying the generator because Bulma ends up coming in and flying and launching some type of these like little capsules that get inside the generator, because Vegeta actually tries to blast the generator and it has a force field around it, so energy attacks can't pierce it. However, a capsule can get inside and ultimately stop the generator from working, cancel the gas out. Now that they've done this, they need to get to the source of where all this Destron gas is coming from, or else the planet will be destroyed. So they learn that the source of where all of this is coming from is a planet known as Planet Dark. The Z Warriors basically go to a ship and set a course to Planet Dark. Once they make it to Planet Dark, while they're on there, they're fighting off a lot of the Ghost Warriors, the remaining Ghost Warriors. And they end up beating them, and then they finally meet up with Dr. Raichi, the person responsible for making the Ghost Warriors and attacking the Saiyans on planet Earth in the first place. And for the most part, the Saiyans end up fighting off against Dr. Raichi, and Dr. Raichi has this like force field that knocks attacks back. But ultimately, they end up breaking the force field with Vegeta killing Dr. Raichi using the Final Flash. And that basically gets rid of Dr. Raichi. Problem solved, correct? Wrong. Dr. Raichi has been working on a project known as Hatchack, the ultimate villain that is generated from all of the gathered hatred from the Tuffles. This warrior, while not complete yet, needed a little bit more hatred in order to gather around. When Dr. Raichi ended up getting killed and fathoming his hatred towards Hatchack, it was all that Hatchack needed in order to be complete. Hatchack comes out and Vegeta basically is the first to strike him, but Hatchack ends up ultimately beating him because he ends up getting hit by Final Flash, but Hatchack doesn't feel a thing. Then the Z Warriors basically all end up fighting, and it appears to be one of those same old fights where the Z Warriors fight the villain and the villain isn't dented by any of their attacks, and like Broly and Super Android 13, it becomes one of those fights. However, this fight is a bit different. Hatchack charges one of his attacks called the Revenge Beam or Revenge Blast and tries to fire it towards Gohan. Before he fires it towards Gohan, however, he's charging up the energy and Trunks ends up kicking Hatchack in mid-charge. Goku notices something. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reveal that this movie has multiple endings. I know, it's weird. Because the fact that this was technically a video game, this had the ability to have multiple endings, not just the standard ending that was given in the 2010 release. Now, I'm going to explain the first ending, and then I'll explain the other endings as well. The first ending is basically how Goku notices that when Hatchack charges energy for the Revenge Blast, a really strong energy blast attack, he notices that Trunks was able to attack him mid-charge. But then Hatchack tries to charge his energy again, and Goku tries to fight him because most of the other Z Warriors have been more or less knocked out. Goku tries to fight him while Hatchak's charging, but instead of Hatchak getting hit by Goku, Hatchak stops charging and ends up blocking Goku and then he goes on the assault. Goku wonders what the difference is, and then he finally flashed back to when Trunks kicked him and realized, oh, Hatchak can charge energy and release it, but there's an interval in between there to which Hatchak needs time in order to blast. Goku figures this out, and it figures out that it takes Hatchak exactly 15 seconds in order to charge the energy and then launch it into an attack. With this knowledge being said, Goku tells the others exactly what time they need to wait, and when they wait the allotted amount of time, 15 seconds, they all come in and attack Hatchak during that point, around 14 seconds. And Hatchak ends up launching the beam. However, his beam isn't fully ready yet, and they end up in a beam struggle. Then all of the Z Warriors using their strongest beams, Masenko, Special Beam Cannon, Final Flash, Burning Attack, and Super Kamehameha, all of these beams fighting off against Hatchak's Revenge Blast at once was too much for Hatchak to handle, and he ultimately dies. That's ending 1. Ending 2. In this ending, Hatchak, while fighting the others, instead of resorting to the Revenge Blast, splits himself into multiple Hatchaks. Multiple smaller Hatchaks. And they end up fighting, and there's a lot of them to handle, and Vegeta, Gohan, Trunks, Piccolo, and Goku and the others are having a hard time. But Goku realizes something. Goku realizes that Hatchak in this form is much weaker because he's divided his power. So now all he needs to do is gather a lot of them into one specific area and have the other Z Warriors combine their strengths in order to beat them all at once rather than separately apart. And that's more or less how they beat that one. The next ending is where they're fighting Hatchak, and rather than using the multi-form attack or just fighting them with a Revenge Blast, he ends up growing in size to the point where he's about as big as a Great Ape or a Lord Slug at his super form. Now, this one was a bit hard. For them to fight Hatchak at this form, he was really strong and swatting the Z Warriors away like flies. And they were having really big disadvantages, and they couldn't really fight Hatchak at this form. However, Goku figured he'd attack him in a vulnerable spot. The Z Warriors come together and bide some time, and Hatchak is trying to get rid of them. But then Goku instant transmissions and sneak attacks and Super Kamehameha's Hatchak in the mouth, which ultimately ends up beating him. Now, the final ending. In this ending, rather than using the Revenge Blast, the multi-form, turning giant, or using his regular form, Hatchak has a mega form now, where his armor more or less looks the same, only it's been like the armor has increased in size, but he's relatively the same size still, and his muscles are bigger and things like that. It's his super form. Now, in this form, his power has skyrocketed, and he's way stronger than the Z Warriors, and ends up beating them. But I like this ending the most. The Z Warriors end up getting their asses kicked mostly, and then Goku ends up trying to think that the only way we're going to beat this guy is by using the Spirit Bomb. And the Z Warriors help buy time for the Spirit Bomb, and when they do, Goku has enough energy for the Spirit Bomb, and Hatchak's ready to actually block this damn thing. But Goku ends up tricking Hatchak and using the instant transmission in order to punch and uppercut Hatchak. And then, while he's distracted by the punch, the Spirit Bomb launches and hits Hatchak. This attack is also known as the instant Spirit Bomb. Yeah, it's a move that was never referenced except for this movie, and I wish they brought it back. It's a very cool, unique way to combine instant transmission and Spirit Bomb. But regardless, that's how Mega Hatchak ends up getting beat. And when the movie's over, Planet Dark ends up exploding because Dragon Ball Z rules. And the planet ends up exploding, and the Z Warriors instant transmission back to Earth. And everything's all fine, said and done, and the world is saved and everyone laughs, and that's the end of the movie. Now, my feelings on this movie in general. Well, first of all, I love this movie. If I were to make a top 10, this would easily make second, only being beaten by Battle of the Gods. I really love that they brought this movie back in 2010. Unfortunately, I wish they had brought the whole movie in its entirety back rather than just bringing the good 30 minutes of it. And even the 30 minutes weren't really that enticing. Also, this is one of the only DBZ movies to never receive a dub, and I'm really upset about that as well. This has never gotten a dub. Even in the Raging... Basically, I'll explain for those of you who don't have the game. For those of you all who don't have Raging Blast 2, if you had purchased a copy of Raging Blast 2 and played the game, you will notice that Hatchack, you can go into the theater section of the settings and go to the theater. When you go to the theater, you can watch the OVA Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans. However, the difference was that a lot of things happened more or less really quickly. The fight with the Ghost Warriors and the Destron generator never happened. The multiple forms of Haytchak were never there. The fight with Hatchack doesn't last as long. The fight with Frieza, Turles, Lord Slug, and Cooler isn't as long. And yeah, a lot of the things were taken out. The quality increased though. It definitely looks better now, but still. The style of drawing is definitely better too, but overall it's less than half of what the original Plan to Eradicate the Super Saiyans movie was. However, I do appreciate the fact that they know that Hatchack was a villain in the series that they needed to bring back. And they definitely didn't need to pass this up to give Dragon Ball Z a chance to be reborn, because this was a lost gem. Had they not released the 2010 re-release for the Raging Blast copy, this would have been a lost gem. This would have been something that would have never been discovered outside of Japan, and I'm really upset to see. I would have really been upset to see something with this much potential be just looked over. Because I enjoyed every minute of this. I watched this on YouTube and I enjoyed every minute. This is one of my favorites. Now, a lot of y'all are going to think, hey, Tyrone, aren't you being a bit hypocritical? You say you don't really like villains with not much personality. You also say you don't like villains that are brick walls to the Z Warriors. True, but this movie has definitely a lot of plot, because the Tuffles are villains that reoccur several times. The Tuffles appear in this movie and were already referenced by King Kai when he explained who the Saiyans were to Goku. And the Tuffles are also shown again in Dragon Ball GT. And while I don't like the Dragon Ball GT series in general, watching the Tuffles reappear so many times in the series as just those hidden villains that we don't really get to see, warms my heart. To know that the Tuffles, the people who should probably have the most grudge against the Saiyans, constantly shows up over and over, but only in spots that we don't expect to see them. And they have every right to. The Tuffles were killed by the Saiyans after they made that treaty to share Planet Plant, which is now Planet Vegeta. So every time I see this, I'm constantly reminded of the origins of Dragon Ball Z and where the Saiyans started from and things like that. It digs a little bit more. This movie digs a little bit more into the backstory and basically opens up the potential can that King Kai had already opened up during the Saiyan Saga's introduction. When King Kai told Goku what the Saiyans were and said who the Tuffles were, that made things much more appreciative when this movie came. This movie wasn't random, is what I'm trying to say. This movie brought premise to what happened back then. And I loved it, and I love to see stuff that happened prior to Frieza blowing up Planet Vegeta, because I love it when the history of Dragon Ball Z goes back way further than when Goku was even born. I like seeing movies that have to do with like Piccolo before he became this Piccolo, the King Piccolo that was on Namek, that was banished to Earth, and his whole trials of how he became the guardian of Earth as Kami. And I love seeing things, hearing and watching things that have to do with this, because it makes the Dragon Ball Z universe expand. And this movie made Dragon Ball Z's universe expand. We know more about the Tuffles now. We know the King Kai stated that the Tuffles were scientifically advanced. This is a great example to show that. Hatchack while not much of a personality himself, is basically the embodiment of hatred that all of the Tuffles have against the Saiyans. Now, Broly's hatred against Goku, while stupid, shows that he has hatred against Goku because he made him cry, boo-hoo. Like I stated in that review, Paragus is the real villain here. Broly is nothing more than the figurehead that ends up beating the Z-Warriors' asses. Hatchack, however, is nothing more than an experiment that Dr. Raichi has, but is the ending result of all of the Tuffle's hatred towards the Saiyan. While not having a personality of his own, he does carry the entire Tuffle race on his shoulders. Because he was created from the hatred of the Tuffles. He means more to me than Broly's stupid, I hate Goku because he cried near my incubator like thing. That's dumb. So there's a difference. And Dr. Raichi was in this movie and was a villain. So at least they fought Dr. Raichi. And I'm glad that they fought Dr. Raichi. Because it gave more of a sense that I can see where this is coming from. I can see this movie expanded on the fact that the Saiyans were cruel. So it actually makes Goku and the others seem like the bad guys for destroying them. But Goku defends his side by saying, look, we know the Saiyans have done some bad things, but leave the Earth out of this. And Vegeta's more on the lines of, you Tuffles have such a grudge against the Saiyans. If it were up to me, you would be eliminated. So you get both halves. Goku and Vegeta representing two different halves. While Gohan, Trunks, and Piccolo are just like, look, we're going to fight to fight. We're not going to ask questions. We're more or less defending the Earth here. So, this movie's motif of the Tuffles, and this movie has a good theme. This motif and theming of the Saiyans versus the Tuffles was a great drawing. And I like the whole Z-Warriors have to split up and go to different sides of the Earth to fight enemies formula. I like that. That was very well done. And I like the fact that they were able to fight. They had to fight conditionally. Like, they couldn't just spam energy blast anymore. They had to resort to using physical prowess in order to fight a lot of these villains because the Destron gas was sucking away their energy. So they had to think more. And I like that too. This movie brought so much. And I also like the fact that this movie was actually an hour and a half long, where most Dragon Ball Z movies at max are 50 minutes long. So it's good to see that. It's good to see that this movie took its time to elaborate on not only the past, but brought some nuances to the future. And also it's fun to note that it was also cool to note that while this was technically a video game too, it transferred to a video game. Like I said, I'm not quite proud that Raging Blast 2 is going to show us the whole movie rather than just 30 minutes, but at least they recognize that this movie exists. It's a shame that it didn't get a dub though. But at least they realized that this movie was a thing. And I would have hated to see that Dragon Ball Z drop the ball on this, because DBZ is a franchise that can go on, can literally go on for as long as we need it to go on, if they take the time to use what they have. Hell, Lupin the Third still has specials coming out. They have specials. Trigun had a movie not too long ago. Well, it's been a while now. I think it was 2011. Trigun had a movie in 2011, for Christ's sakes. So it's good to see that in 2010 Dragon Ball. But I wish that Plan to Eradicate the Super Saiyans had like I said, had more of a release on it. Like, had more of a emphasis on it. But we all can't get maximum here. The quality isn't as good in the 1993's version versus the 2010, but what is inside the movie, there's more to this version obviously than the 2010 version, and I appreciate it more because of it. Hatchack as a whole, he's a villain in only one game, and that's then that's Raging Blast 2, obviously the movie, the one that had the OVA. Like I said, I thought this was movie worthy. This was movie worthy. There's a lot of Dragon Ball Z specials, which I will review. Don't worry. I will end up reviewing the specials when I'm done with the movies. But I wanted to put this in movie section. I felt this was worthy as a movie. I go into this watching it as a movie. So when I watch this, I watch this as a movie. It's split into 5 parts if you look for it on YouTube, but I watch it expecting to watch it as a movie. They made a fan dub, which doesn't sound that bad, but at the same time, I don't like fan dubs. That's my whole thing. I don't really care for fan dubs. But regardless, would I recommend this? Oh, most definitely. Like I said, this is my second favorite movie. I would definitely recommend this one, more so because of the fact that this gives more of a formula of what a Dragon Ball Z movie is supposed to be. This breaks down the formula of how the series works, as well as shows off the origin story. It makes you wonder more about the Saiyan era, the Saiyan versus Tuffles era of Dragon Ball Z, that hidden era that nobody really goes back to reference except for GT. Unfortunately, see, and that's the thing. I love the fact that GT would reference the Tuffles, but at the same time, GT F's up by screwing up the format. Like, you can have a great, it's like a play. You can have a beautiful script, but if the actors, the tech, and the overall funding you put into it is going to be crappy, then the play itself is going to be crappy. Which is a lot like how GT was to me, but I'll get into GT later. But I'm just saying, like, I'm glad GT did do was bring back the Tuffles. Unfortunately, they brought back the Tuffles in the sense that they brought back the Tuffles. That's good. The way they execute them is bad. That's more or less what I have to say. But it's good to see a reoccurring villain like the Tuffles show up, and all of the things that it caused, and to give this movie a good jump start into who exactly the Tuffles are. Because had King Kai told that story to Goku all the way back in the Saiyan Saga episode when Goku asked, "Who are the Saiyans?" And King Kai's description when given and telling us who the Tuffles were made us wonder, well, the Saiyans attacked the Tuffles, aren't they going to want revenge? And this movie finally answers that question. Hell yeah. And it digs deep into DBZ's past, and I love it for it. Like I said, I would definitely recommend this movie. Like I said, I think the only way to watch it for real is on YouTube, or if you somehow can find a Playdia console and the VCRs for it, and yeah, good luck doing all of that. Oh, the multiple endings, I should probably talk about those as well. While in the OVA, the 2010 re-release OVA never covered the fact that Hatchack has multiple forms, and I think that's something that that they could have benefited from. Or to the very least, I think the mega form of Hatchack should have been in the movie, because the mega form of Hatchack shows exactly how strong Hatchack can potentially be. And it also, the way Hatchack gets killed is by an instant transmission spirit bomb. Like, that's a really unique way to kill a villain to me. So they kind of dropped the ball on that. But it's one of those things where even if you watch it on YouTube, you won't end up seeing the Mega Hatchack ending. The only reason I knew about the other ending is because I looked this movie up on Wikipedia. After I was done watching the OVA, after I was done watching this, I ended up looking on Wikipedia to get more information about it, because I actually learned about this on accident. I was watching a small little AMV of Dragon Ball Z, and I noticed they were fighting a villain that I'd never seen before. And when you see a villain that you've never seen before after watching the whole Dragon Ball Z series for at least 3 times, which had the amount of times I've watched this whole series has significantly increased since then, you get curious and wonder, well, who the hell was that? So I went into it and tried to look into it more and see all the villains that DBZ fought, and I noticed Hatchack. I'm like, who's that? And I looked into Hatchack, and that's how more or less how I learned about this was from Dragon Ball Wiki. And when I learned about Hatchack, I typed in "plan to eradicate the the Saiyans" on YouTube, and that's how I ended up watching the entire special. I was a little lucky enough that someone actually had it. I don't think you can see the other endings though, like the multi-Hatchacks and the giant Hatchack and the mega Hatchack. Yeah, you won't see those endings anywhere for real. At least I don't think so. But it's good to see a movie with with alternate endings too. I like that concept. And they're alternate endings that don't really stir away from the movie in general. They're just different potential threats that Hatchack can be if he's big or multiple forms or stronger than he was before. So it's good to know that this movie not only is branched, it makes it unique because it branches, but it's also good to note that that while it branches, it's one of those, like I said, a hidden gem. It's definitely a hidden gem that I'm glad they brought back in 2010. It's not quite like I said, 2010's version isn't quite as good, but you know, the fact that they know it exists is something. It helps. Definitely helps. So, with that said, like I said, I love this movie. Go in and type in "plan to eradicate the Saiyans" on YouTube. You will not be disappointed. It's really good. With that said, I will see you all then. The next time I come back, we will do a review of movie 9, BoJack Unbound. So I'll see you all then, everybody. Tyrone, the Guy Pre, out.